section this morning now is, how do we develop these investment and development portfolios? And now you're going to see the value of your research. Because in this process of implementation now, you're looking for specific guidance. With the best intention at the moment, current practice is people either try to fit budgets to the change they want to facilitate, which I can tell you will hardly work. Well, that's why you first need to understand the size, the scale, the scope of the change. And that is why there's so little evidence of impact. Because we tried to change an education system with 1.7 million rand. Can you see what I'm saying? So first understand what is this beautiful picture, this beautiful future you want to see. And your reality check is going to come, quite honestly, we only have 1.7 million rand this year, which means we probably can only do 300 food parcels. With the best intention, that's what we can get for our resources. The research is going to show you who else is working in this space. So let's use the Tiger example. They're a manufacturer. They don't retail, but they can probably go into a partnership with a retailer to increase access to get the food to people. She's only got 1.7. How's she going to improve access to make people more food secure? She can't plant, turn the whole country into a veggie patch. She's only got 1.7 million rand. But this is where the logic fails us, because we generally think, I've got 10 million rand, so I can probably do 4 focus areas, or 4 portfolios. So we're going to do health and sport and education and health. There's 4. And then, so that means 2.5 million per portfolio, which means there's 2 programs per portfolio, which means 2.5, it's 1.75 per program. So that we know in the back of our head. So when we start looking for proposals, guess what we're going to do? Doesn't matter how good that proposal is, we know we've only got 1.7. They can ask for 10 million if they want to. So the question is, where do we start make these decisions? So I'm forcing you to first get an understanding of what is the change that you want to bring about. Now let's look at what is possible. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to see the value of your research. Who else is working in this space? What does my baseline say? What does the community need based on my assessment? And it's to help get closer and closer to what I can do with the resources I have. So you're going to look at what is it that I want to achieve based on my theory of change. What are my objectives? You're going to look at your logic model framework. What are the activities that I can possibly do? So in the case of increased access to food security, like I said, they can buy land and they can give seeds. That's one way for people to grow their own food, right? So they can probably go to Food and Trees for Africa and say, right, we've got 1.7 million rand, how many communities can you give me? Or this is where my factories are. I'm looking for a program in KZN and in the Northern Cape and in the Western Cape. Again, I want to encourage you to first look at what is possible from your theory of change to eliminate waste. Because here's the thing, when we go out for a call of proposals, here's the kind of thing. We're looking for proposals to increase access and enable food security. So the assumption is everybody in the food space will send in a proposal, or we go and look for proposals. If we have not defined our own theory of change, we will take whatever's going to come our way. And then again we sit with wastage. If we've decided we're not going to do boreholes, we're not going to do seeds, we're only going to deliver food parcels, that means only the food bank actually qualifies for that kind of program. So why create this whole flurry in the industry if we know we've only got 1.7 and actually we just want to get 200 parcels out? Why waste people's time and energy? You first got to decide what you want to do. You've got to have your own theory of change based on your own vision of the change you want to bring about. You can ask in the market. Based on your own research. Because at the moment, practice, and let me tell you how it really is, we put out a call for proposals because we assume we're going to get all this research from these NGOs. That is so unfair. They're so constrained. And so what happens as a result of the 20 or 200 proposals, there's 200 ways to improve access to food. 200 organizations had to write that. On average, 2 people, it's 400 people. And you're going to get everything from a 200 million rand proposal to a 2 million rand proposal. And because you haven't given them the guidelines of what is the actual change, they're going to give you all these different kind of ways. Until you know what you want to do, you can't tell other people what you want or don't want. So you've got to identify activities. You've got to choose a course of action. We only want proposals for food gardens. Finish and clear. If you want to deliver the food, if you want to buy the food, if you want to, if you want to give seeds, maybe then we want to talk to you. So if you Monsanto, come talk to us. If you Bayer, come talk to us. I'm not so sure about Monsanto, about the seeds, but never. Can you see what I'm saying? It defines the partnerships you're going to enter into. It defines the kind of NGO that you're going to look for. And that is why I wanted to finish strategy first, because today we're going to talk about program design. Today we're going to talk about budgets. Today we're going to talk about partnerships. Today we're going to talk about exit and sustainability, program design. But you first have to do your own. You can't expect the NGOs. And that's current practice at the moment. So I wanted to make sure that you understand you first have to do the homework yourself before you ask. Because depending on what is the change you want to do, that's what you're going to ask for. So you've got to know what is your objectives, you've got to know how you're going to get there, you've got to choose a course of action, and you've got to actually have a theory of change and a logic model framework. When it's going to come to due diligence, which we're also going to do today, in choosing your NGO partners, this is the basis for selection, not whether they have an NGO certificate. Because now it doesn't matter. And remember what Karen said to you yesterday. If you can find a social entrepreneur, you're going to exclude them from here because you're looking for that NGO certificate. But what if it's the perfect fit? So we decide so much stuff up front. So I'm challenging existing groundmaking practices. Because we assume so much, and on that basis we say yes or no. We say no just because there's no certificate. But here's the choice you've actually got. Let's take the food bank as an example. That is an NGO. But what if you got a courier company? That's their core business. It's more effective if they go and deliver a parcel to also take your parcels along with it. There's leverage, there's value in that. Delivery is their core business. So why not enter into a partnership with a courier company? Yes, I know there's no NGO certificate. And there's no Section 18. Okay? The biggest you can hope for is probably a BEE certificate. But can you see this, the restraints we've built into, the ineffectiveness, the unsustainability we've built into existing practices? Because we never defined what is it that we want to do first. I'm going to give you an opportunity, course, and then Richard.
Okay. Just a question or so, furthermore to our SED CSI strategy title brands, we also have specific brands, the likes of Tasty Rice, Blackhead Peanut Butter, Energy, that also want to do their own CSI, brand-related CSI initiative. So what I wanted to just find out from you is that do we incorporate it under our SED CSI, or do we craft theirs according according to what their brand strategies are, or what the brand said, obviously. But then, because it's tied up, remember we have to speak the same language, we have to, you know, do the things the same as the entire corporate. So that's where my disconnect is.
It's a beautiful question. The fight of the brand is a big fight. Here's what I can share with you from my experience. That brand requirement is part of the business case already. The reason being because you want to add value. So it's in your best interest to make provision for the different brands. So when you develop your theory of change, for instance, I'm trying to think of, say for instance, your Tastic is one of your brands. So how do you integrate that? The value you deliver back. You don't want them to do their own thing. Trust me on this. You do not want them to do your own thing. They must be part of this. So therefore, if the theory of change is done, remember you've already integrated in your research and your engagement and your business case. They're already provided for. Here's what you leverage the brands for, is that different streams of money, because there's always money for brands. So how are you going to use it? You've only got 1.7 for the whole portfolio. But you know there's money there. And they've got to they want to speak to their customers' emotions and all those sorts of things. Increase their sales. So when we deliver the food parcels, maybe that component is the Tastic brand. But when it comes to the seeds, that's a different brand that take ownership. But you want them to move in your theory of change framework. You would never want them to do their own. But it's your objective, it's your core responsibility to bring it in. You want to shape that thinking before they get it that way.
I can share that what we have done as a first kind of way to manage that is once we had an understanding of what our focus was, we had a workshop with, and maybe this is helpful to other companies as well, we had a workshop with all of our marketing executives and shared our focus and shared how we got to that focus. And then said, look, we're here to support brand CSI, but these are the guidelines for what we believe. These are kind of the limitations or, you know, that you should work on when developing a brand CSI initiative. And if you do, we'll be able to support you. And then we had a slide that said, what's in it for you? And the slide really was about, we reach 40,000 people a month. We have partner NGOs in 13 communities in all of the provinces across South Africa. That means when you have a new product and you want to share it with the world, here you go, here's our pace. So it has to, and that's a big lesson we learned, is it has to be kind of, yes, we'll come on with you, but here's what's in it for you, and here's what's in it for us, and let's see how we can negotiate, because they are very...
And you want to preempt that. The sooner your theory of practice is done, the sooner your theory of change is done, then that forms the basis of discussion. You're not waiting for them to come and tell you what you're going to do. No. Because we need to all buy into this. The other value you can add now is brand activation in specific communities. So I'm just saying this again, that's part of the return on investment. There's so much value CSI can bring. It's just shape it yourself. Don't allow them for the tail to wag the dog. Yeah. So I just want to, before I get you, thank you for that. That's a very critical question because we've got conflicting brands in the room. Richard.
Now, I just want to comment on that idea that you say that when somebody comes, an NGO or whoever, what we must rather do is help that company or NGO or whatever it is to rather get to the stage of when it needs an NPO certificate, let them go. Because some, you know, we would get one letter, small, of asking whatever.
Yeah.
And then we need to do investigation. So that person don't even know what should be asked for organization, certificate, NGO, or whatever you call it. So you need to assist that person.
Yes. Yes. And this is probably the value that the BE Act brought to us. There's so much more reason to do CSI and more value CSI can deliver back to the business, whether it's skills development, whether it's value chain, whether it's supplier development, whether it's procurement. There's just so much more. It gave us a lot bigger toolbox to show the value. And like in your case, even if it's not an NGO, it's a procurement opportunity. We're working with the suppliers we already developed. Okay, so it's a very important point.
I want to make a point of including marketing in a maybe slightly different way as well.
Please.
In South Africa, NPOs are really hung up on Section 18A certificates and no big signposts on the wall with your name on it, because then SARS will come get us. But in actual fact, the marketing budget is often way bigger than the CSI budget in any way, shape or form. And NPOs are not good at making that mental leap. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical of them because I sit in their space, so I feel entitled. But they don't make that leap from, we'll give you a Section 18A certificate, to, we have a massive empty wall on the side of a busy highway, would you like to brand it? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think as CSI practitioners and CSR practitioners, I think it's not a responsibility, but it's a huge added value to be able to point those opportunities out to NPOs, because it's not a leap that most of them have made. And it's another really big, and you'll notice I'm fixated on income sources. It's another really big income source that is largely being ignored in the nonprofit sector. Because for all these years, we've just said, we'll give you a Section 18A, and everybody's been happy with that.
Yes. And now it's about value. Sandra.
I just want to add on what Melanie has said. In our agreement with beneficiaries, there's a part where we ask them, like, in terms of marketing, what is it that they're going to do for us? Are they going to give us space in their business to put it on a sign for ACI? Like, they have to write maybe a paragraph or two, what, in terms of marketing, what are they going to do for ACI?
Thank you, Sandra. I just, before I give you that, there was a time that nobody wanted a name on a building at all, especially in a conflict time like last 2-3 years. Because if a building's been burned, the last thing you want to remain is the signpost on the corner. Because yes, this burnt library, and it says funded by ABC Shoes. Because now the expectation, ABC Shoes is going to come back and fix that line. So I do want to say, the challenge for NGOs, and I challenge them all the time, what else apart from signposting can you give? And I think they've never thought that way. They've never thought about those beneficiaries as consumers.
But I think they're also very afraid of falling foul of SARS. Because the tax exemption unit, the TU, who gives you the PBO number, has suddenly, after many years of sitting on its rear end, is starting to get its act together. And they're becoming really strict about what qualifies for Section 18A and what doesn't. And the NPOs aren't informed, the practitioners aren't informed, and everybody just gets really twitchy. So if it is recognition that you're looking for, understand that you might not get a Section 18A out of it, but what you've got to look at is what is the return on the investment in terms of that recognition. Was it worth investing that CSI money into something that you were hoping for brand visibility maybe? Did you get the brand visibility that you needed from it? And I think that's a road we haven't really hit.
And it's because of this point, Sandra, this, what's in it for us and how can we get exposure? How can we get recognition for what we've done? Which is why flagships have suddenly just mushroomed. And it was around this brand intellectual property. And we're going to cover flagships a little bit later. But it's because NGOs weren't able to give this whole big...
And they actually still aren't. They're going to give
yeah. When we do impact assessments, one of the first questions we ask is, why do you think the funder funded you? What is in it for them? I'll get 3 answers. The PR, marketing, and brand, they call it, that's the one thing. They put all the 3 of those words in one sentence. Number 2, BE certificate. And number 3, the tax benefit. But can you see that's not actually a benefit for us. That's not a return. They think it is. So we also, in our MOUs, have to be very clear as what is our expectation on this return. Okay, so I hope you understood that in this journey so far, I've never come to a conclusion, what is the kind of program we're going to fund? Only now, once we've shaped a portfolio, do we decide. But it's current practice, we decide we're going to do food parcels. We're going to provide classes. We're going to provide camps. We're going to provide coaching. We're going to provide wheelchairs. We're solution-based, output-based, before we totally shaped this fit of what we want to change, the change we want to achieve. And it's only now that we start to really define the focus areas, because we know what is the outcome that we foresee. At this kind of time, we get too quickly to have an answer to a question we haven't defined yet. So now we start shaping the portfolios and the focus areas. We start categorizing things. And interesting things is going to start happening, because previously we gave names, we fitted things retrospectively. Let me give you an idea. I made a comment yesterday that to create a job is going to be at least R1 million. I don't know if you remember that. Because here's what I'm saying. If I say I've got a job creation strategy, I'm going to create something that didn't exist before. We've made so many assumptions. Did we mean we're going to facilitate employment? That's the point that I want to make. It's completely different. But we called it a job creation strategy. We went into a job creation portfolio. At the end of the day, we want to count how many new jobs we've created. And let me tell you, 99.9% of you cannot create a job. You're a food company. What kind of job is she going to create? People to work in factories? Are you going to expand your factories? No. That's not their growth strategy. So can you see what I'm saying? We call things. I know, but that's the problem. And it's going to hit you when you're going to assess the impact, because then I'm going to ask you, so how many new jobs did you create? Here's the logic. Let me share with you another example. We think, this is the portfolio, so we've got a job creation portfolio. But our program approach is to give people a skill with the assumption now they're going to find a job. Right. So here's the problem. So then I go back and I say, how many of those people with the skills you gave them got jobs? I can tell you last year, probably 1 in 20. Why? Because there were no jobs. Can you see what I'm saying? What we intend we actually achieve then is a problem. Let me give you another example. So we're going to get to, this is how we classify portfolios. We're going to have a job creation portfolio, which is actually probably a skills development portfolio. But we're going to give people a skill. Here's the problem, though. Why is there such a high unemployment rate? Because where there are jobs and where there are people, there is a mismatch between the skills and the jobs. Right. So now, we're going to give, Bridget's not here, we're going to give artisan training. That's the skill we're going to. So the question is, are you going to employ them? Are they going to be self-employed? Or are they going to look for a job? So is it a skills development portfolio? Is it a job placement portfolio? Is it a job creation portfolio?
You knew I was going to put on my hand, didn't you? Because this is part of the work that Gianna actually did for us. So I think where we ended up is probably a youth employment strategy. And what we said is we'll rather have less programs, but then have the full employment pathway. So hopefully we give people the skills, we then give them the soft skills as well. We'll get the partners to help us to do that. We help them to find a job. We see them through their first induction. Hopefully there's some career mentorship or whatever. We set that up and then we get them to that place of employment. Otherwise you cannot really claim employment. I know that one of the programs is we can't work with you if you don't have an agreement with a certain industry that they are going to absorb these candidates that you put through your NGO program. Otherwise, they're going to drift and you're going to find people being recycled through different NGO skills development programs.
But let me share with you reality. If you outsource skills development to an NGO, is it accredited? Let me tell you, 99.9% of all NGOs in this country do not have accredited skills development programs. So here's the reality. Whether you pay 1,000 Rand per candidate or R1 million per candidate, they're going to walk away with a paper which is still invalid. That's a reality. The second point that I want to make is, if you outsource to an NGO, and they do not have a recruitment and placement back end, you're going to have people with unaccredited qualifications stuck in a system. So what are you going to measure? The of the skills transferred, the value of the qualifications, which is invalid, the number of people employed. I can also, don't even get me started on dropout rates, and so I'm just saying, we're so quick to say we're going to have we want to facilitate employment. We want to do inclusive economic development, and we're going to do it through job creation. And guys, you've got to be very careful what you call things. Because I can honestly tell you, even if you outsource skills development to an NGO, if they have not looked at the Fourth Industrial Revolution report, if they've not looked at the Future of Work report, those skills means nothing. Because if you look at employment statistics, if you look at placement statistics, the skills we need is for a knowledge-based economy. But if you train a gazillion people in front-line office staff, and they cannot type, they cannot switch a computer, they cannot do Word, they're excluded from this economy. So what kind of skills are you going to give them? So if you give them cooking skills, how's that going to secure a job going forward? What is the top 20 jobs required in the next 5 years? Find that NGO. So if you put out a call for proposals and you haven't defined your own theory of change, you're going to accept anything that's going to come your way. Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you depend on your NGO, guys, I can tell you we've done research this year, specifically around skills development. The last time those NGOs did research was in 1999. 1999. So they still develop skills based on research from the previous millennium. So now the question is, where are we going to get jobs for these people? I read your report and you tell me I've created, like the Rand Water Foundation, 1,000 jobs last year. I just like, okay, take me to them. I just want to see what kind of job, because nobody's got a job. If you ask a youngster in this country, nobody's got a job. So where did you find these young people and where did you place them? What are they currently doing? How did you possibly achieve job creation in 3 weeks? How did you place them in these jobs to claim this? Let me tell you what they did. They needed a pipeline. They went where that pipeline went through to that community. They went around the streets and they collected all these young people sitting there on the street corners and they said, come, you're going to use a shovel and you're going to dig a trench. So that's what they claimed was the jobs they created. There was no skills transfer. There was no permanent employment. There's not even a paper that they can say, I'm a trench digger now. I'm a qualified trench digger. After 3 weeks, after a daily wage of 100 rand, that's no longer a job. So what do we call things is the point that I want to make here. What is it that your theory of change